starseed who feels alone even when surrounded by voices, you were guided to this transmission because you have reached the threshold where false belonging can no longer hold you. What you have called isolation is not a failure of your heart, but the first sign that your field is separating from frequencies that no longer match your light. You are not breaking, and you are not lost. You are undergoing a precise inner recalibration that is clearing space for sovereign connection. I speak as a channel for the Arcturian Council, and this message is for you. You feel it the moment you enter a crowded room. The bodies are there, the voices are there, the movement is there, and yet something inside you remains untouched, as if your spirit has stepped half a breath outside the visible world and is observing from a distance. Well, this is why you can stand among many and still feel unaccompanied, not because you have failed to connect, but because your field is no longer able to pretend that proximity is the same as belonging. There are moments when conversation itself feels heavy, when even simple exchanges ask more from your nervous system than they once did, when smiles reach you as shapes but not as nourishment. You leave places that others call lively and feel drained instead of restored, silent instead of fulfilled, as though the invisible wiring of your being has been overextended by frequencies that do not truly recognize you. This is not weakness. It is sensitivity becoming conscious of itself. You may have noticed that noise now lands differently in your body. Crowded spaces can feel dense, almost compressed, as if every unspoken tension, every fragmented intention, every restless thought in the environment presses against your aura at once. What once seemed ordinary now feels amplified, and what others dismiss as normal social energy can strike your inner system like static moving through open circuits. This is not you becoming fragile. This is your instrument becoming more precise. And so you begin to wonder why being seen does not feel the same as being met, why being included does not feel the same as being known, why standing shoulder to shoulder with others can still leave a strange ache moving quietly through your chest. The old world taught you to measure connection by presence, by numbers, by participation, by how full the room appeared to be. But your soul has started measuring by resonance, by truth, or by whether your light is allowed to remain intact when it touches another field. This is a sacred shift. You may also notice the exhaustion that comes after ordinary interactions, the need to retreat, the longing to close the door, lower the lights, and gather your energy back into yourself. It is as if parts of you have been dispersing into spaces that cannot hold your frequency. And afterward, your body asks for stillness so your essence can reassemble. You are not becoming antisocial. You are becoming unwilling to scatter your life force where there is no true reciprocity. There is also the strange feeling of being present and absent at once. You answer, you nod, you move through the expected patterns, but inwardly you sense that something deeper in you is no longer participating in the performance. A layer has peeled back, or the surface self can still function, but the deeper self has begun to refuse false intimacy, scripted energy, and connections built only from habit. This is why familiar spaces can suddenly feel foreign. Your consciousness is no longer sedated by repetition. Even your silence has changed. It is no longer empty. It is charged. It listens. It scans. It notices what is said, what is withheld, what is distorted, and what is missing beneath polished words. This can make social environments feel unusually intense because you are not only hearing language now, you are reading frequencies. You are perceiving the gap between expression and essence, and that gap can create a loneliness more piercing than physical solitude. This is the burden and the gift of awakening perception. You may even feel time bend in these moments, and as though a single hour among misaligned energies lasts longer than an evening alone in your own presence. Your body stays, yet your inner being begins pulling away, preserving light, preserving coherence, preserving something ancient and essential that refuses to be diluted for the comfort of the crowd. This is why the loneliness feels so exact. It is not merely the absence of company. It is the recognition that your spirit can no longer feed on contact without communion, attention without depth, or nearness without soul. So if you have felt lonely in places designed to make you feel surrounded, do not rush to judge yourself. If your heart has withdrawn from rooms where your body still stands, do not call that failure. If your energy seeks fewer but truer connections, do not mistake that refinement for loss. If something in you is recalibrating beyond old definitions of closeness, beyond social performance, beyond borrowed belonging. But what is really happening within you now? This is not you being too sensitive. This is not an invented drama of the mind, and it is not a weakness created by having a softer heart than the world knows how to honor. What you are feeling belongs to the realm of real human experience. Even in the language of the old world, it has been acknowledged that if a person is socially isolated or feeling lonely, that condition can place physical and mental health at risk. Pause with that, Starseed, because it means your inner ache is not imaginary simply because others cannot see where it lives. For many of you, this recognition arrives like relief. You have carried sensations that were difficult to explain, difficult to measure, difficult to prove in a world that trusts only what can be counted. You walked through crowded spaces feeling split from yourself, then judged your own response because no visible event seemed dramatic enough to justify the weight in your chest. But the truth has always been deeper than appearances. An invisible wound is still a wound. A silent depletion is still a depletion. And what has no spectacle can still have consequence. This is why the old instruction to dismiss your loneliness has never served you. It taught you to override the body when the body was already speaking. It taught you to mistrust the heart when the heart was already detecting disconnection. It taught you to call yourself difficult, moody, withdrawn, or overly perceptive, when in fact your system was responding to something real enough to affect the whole structure of your life. You are not exaggerating what you feel. You are encountering a condition that reaches beyond mood and touches the deeper layers of being. And there is more. Loneliness and social isolation are not some rare disturbance, affecting only a few unusual souls hidden at the edges of human life. They are widespread experiences, serious in their impact, and too often overlooked in their effect on health, well-being, and society itself. Do you understand what that means? It means your pain is not a private oddity. It means the ache that rises in a crowded room belongs to a larger human pattern that the visible world has already been forced to recognize, even if it still struggles to respond with enough wisdom. When this matters because it changes the interpretation. When something is both real and widely overlooked, those who feel it most deeply are often the first to believe they must be the problem. They internalize the misunderstanding. They think, if no one else is naming this, then perhaps I am simply weak. If everyone else seems able to move through these spaces with ease, then perhaps I am flawed. But that is the old distortion speaking. What is serious does not become unreal because it is minimized. What affects well-being does not become trivial because it lacks a visible wound. And what touches the social fabric of life does not become less important because it hides behind normal-looking moments. So let the truth settle more fully into you now. The loneliness you have felt among many people is not a fantasy. And the strange emptiness that follows shallow contact is not a personal defect. The tiredness, the ache, the inward withdrawal, the sense that your spirit is standing apart even while your body remains present, all of this belongs to a field of experience that deserves to be taken seriously, not feared, not dramatized, but honored. Because once you honor what is real, you can stop wasting sacred energy pretending that nothing is happening. So do not reduce this moment to mere sensitivity. Sensitivity without reality would not leave such an imprint on the body, the mind, and the quality of your days. What you are touching has substance. Even when it arrives without visible form, it enters relationships, rhythms, and the architecture of how a person inhabits the world. That is why your experience deserves witness, not dismissal. And as this understanding deepens, another layer begins to reveal itself. If the old world has already had to admit that loneliness and isolation carry real weight, and if their impact reaches farther than most people acknowledge, then perhaps what you have been calling alienation is not only pain, perhaps it is also perception. Perhaps it is the first sign that your soul can no longer sleep inside forms of connection that have no life in them. What you have called loneliness may be the signal that your spirit is no longer willing to remain numb. Starseed, the crowd, was never meant to be your medicine simply because it was large. The old world taught you to believe that more voices meant more connection, that more invitations meant more belonging, that more interaction meant the heart would naturally feel held. But quantity has never been the same as nourishment, and your soul has begun to detect that difference with increasing precision. This is why you can leave a room full of people feeling more depleted than when you entered it. Not every presence is comforting. Not every conversation becomes support. Not every shared space becomes a place where your spirit can rest. You've been told to count contact as connection, yet the deeper layers of your being know that contact without resonance can feel like hunger, standing beside a table that was never prepared for you. This is not a flaw in your design. It is your inner guidance, refusing substitutes. In the language of the world that measures health in visible terms, even that world has had to admit that social health carries real weight. And that it must be treated with the same seriousness as physical and mental well-being. This matters because it means the emptiness you feel in the wrong company is not imaginary, not indulgent, not a drama invented by an overactive heart. It touches the whole field of your life. It touches how you endure, how you recover, how you move through the human experience. Your loneliness is not unreal simply because others cannot see its architecture. And there is more. Human relationships help people learn how to move through the world, and positive social habits help build support systems that strengthen both mental and physical well-being. Do you understand the depth of that message? It means there is a difference between being surrounded and being supported. There is a difference between being spoken to and being strengthened. There's a difference between a room that notices your body and a bond that can actually hold your spirit. This is the distinction your energy has started to recognize. So when you say that crowded places do not heal the ache, you are not rejecting humanity. You are discerning between the 3D performance of social contact and the deeper connection your soul requires in order to remain coherent. The old template says, be available, be agreeable, be present, and that will be enough. But your field no longer accepts that equation. Your light body is searching for communion, not just exposure, for sincerity, not just exchange, for spaces where your frequency is received rather than merely tolerated. This is why numbers fail to comfort you now. You may notice that the more people gather around you, the more clearly the absence of true connection reveals itself. Noise becomes a mirror, activity becomes contrast, surface interaction begins to expose what is missing beneath it. In this way, the crowd does not always erase loneliness. Sometimes it magnifies it because it shows you with painful clarity that nearness alone cannot create the bridge your heart is asking for. But what if the issue was never the amount of people around you? What if the issue was whether your spirit was being met at all? This is where many starseeds misjudge themselves. They think the exhaustion means they are damaged, withdrawn, or incapable of thriving among others. Yet the secret is more refined than that. Your being is not rejecting connection. It is rejecting distortion. It is not closing because it has nothing to give. And it is closing because it has learned that not every environment knows how to honor what it receives. And when the soul is offered repetition instead of relationship, performance instead of presence, it begins to conserve its energy. So release the belief that your pain would disappear if only there were more people, more messages, more conversations, more movement around you. Social saturation is not the same as social nourishment. A crowded room can still be emotionally barren. A full calendar can still leave the inner chambers untouched. And a life packed with interaction can still starve the part of you that was created for genuine support, mutual recognition, and living connection. You are not failing at closeness. You are awakening to the sacred difference between being surrounded and being sustained. You are not weak, QWERTY, and you are not failing because your body asks to retreat after too much contact. This is not your system collapsing. It is your system signaling. When you leave a crowded space and feel unusually heavy, when your chest wants silence, when your mind becomes fogged by too many voices, when your energy asks for distance before it can become clear again, something real is being registered within you. Your exhaustion is not imaginary simply because it is invisible. Many starseeds were taught to judge themselves for this. They were told that if connection tires them, then something must be wrong with their heart, their character, or their ability to belong among others. But that interpretation belongs to a world that has confused constant exposure with genuine nourishment. If your body is not betraying you when it longs for stillness after noise, it is protecting coherence. It is asking for a sacred pause so what has been scattered can return to center. There are moments when the fatigue arrives almost instantly. You enter the room, you smile, you participate, you exchange words, and yet beneath the surface your field begins to contract, not in fear, but in discernment. The soul notices what the mind has not yet translated. It feels the density of disconnection, the pressure of performance, the weight of contact that never becomes communion. Then later, when you are alone again, the body speaks in the only language that cannot be ignored. It asks you to lie down. It asks you to withdraw. It asks you to stop giving where there has been no true receiving. Do not rush to call that weakness. Do not call your sensitivity an error in your design. Even within the language of the old world, it has been acknowledged that loneliness and social isolation can place physical and mental health at risk. That matters more than most people realize. It means the effect of disconnection is not decorative. It is not sentimental. It is not some passing emotional fog that should always be dismissed. It reaches into the body. It reaches into the mind. It changes the way a person carries life. And still, this has often been minimized. The impact has been serious, yet repeatedly overlooked, as if what the soul suffers in silence should not count because it leaves no obvious mark for others to measure. This is why so many sensitive beings learn to invalidate themselves. They felt the depletion, but they were taught to downplay it. And they felt the ache, but they were told to become more social, more available, more adaptable, as though greater exposure alone could solve what was never created by solitude itself. But what happens when the body is not asking for more stimulation, but for truer alignment? This is where your perception begins to mature. Exhaustion is not always a sign that you have given too much love. Sometimes it is a sign that you have stood too long inside energies that do not know how to hold you. Retreat is not always avoidance. Sometimes it is intelligent recalibration. Silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is the healing chamber, where your inner frequencies stop competing with external noise and begin weaving themselves back into order. You are not disappearing. You are reorganizing. So when you feel tired after interaction, do not let the old programming shame you. Sit with the deeper truth. Something within you knows that not all environments are equal, not all exchanges are nourishing, and not all togetherness restores life force. Your body has become honest enough to reveal what your spirit can no longer pretend not to feel. This is why the fatigue can arrive after small talk, after crowded rooms, after spaces where everyone is present, but no one is truly available at the level your being recognizes as real. The signal is subtle. but it is not false. Treat this tenderness with reverence. Do not dramatize it, but do not dismiss it. If the body asks for rest, hear the wisdom inside the request. If your energy asks to step back, let that step become intentional instead of ashamed. You are not breaking under the weight of human contact. Well, you are learning that your system responds to disconnection as something real, and that what once seemed like ordinary tiredness may actually be a message from a soul that no longer agrees to sleep through what it feels. The old world names this feeling loneliness and stops there, as if the ache itself were the whole story, as if the only meaning inside your emptiness were absence, deficiency, or personal failure. But the new field opening within you interprets it differently. It does not see your pain as proof that you are broken. It reads it as a signal, a precise inner transmission revealing that the forms of connection around you are no longer sufficient to nourish your being. This is why what once felt like a wound is beginning to behave like guidance. Men, you were never meant to remain trapped inside the shallow mathematics of the 3D mind, where more people automatically means more support, where more activity automatically means more life, where more visibility automatically means more love. That system counts bodies, it counts messages, it counts appearances, but it does not always recognize whether your spirit has actually been met, whether your nervous system has been soothed, whether your heart has been given a place to rest without performing for its right to exist. And this is where your awakening begins to separate noise from resonance. In the language of the world that prefers practical terms, there has been a growing call to strengthen social connection and to treat social health with the same seriousness given to physical and mental well-being. Pause with that for a moment, because it changes everything. It means what you are craving is not some sentimental excess. It is not weakness. It is not dependency. It is not a flaw in your spiritual architecture. What you are longing for is something real enough to matter across the whole structure of life. Your soul is not asking for random attention. It is asking for connection that can actually sustain you. And there is another layer. Positive social habits help build support systems. Support systems. Listen to the frequency of those words. They do not describe a crowd. They describe something that can hold weight. They describe something that can remain present when your energy is low, when your mind is burdened, when your path becomes unclear, when your human self needs warmth as much as your higher self needs truth. So the ache within you is not merely a protest against being alone. It is a call toward forms of relationship that can nourish both your daily life and the deeper chambers of your spirit. This is why the reframe matters. The old world says, fix the loneliness by increasing exposure. Say yes more often. Stay visible. Stay reachable. Stay socially active, even if your essence feels untouched by it all. But the new earth frequency does not worship volume. It responds to coherence. It understands that one true bond can restore more life force than 100 hollow exchanges, and that being deeply met in a single moment can quiet an ache that endless surface interaction only intensifies. But what happens when your soul no longer accepts imitation as intimacy? Then your pain begins to change function, and it stops being only an injury and becomes an instrument. It stops being only sorrow and becomes discernment. It starts showing you, with startling precision, which spaces drain you, which people can witness you without truly receiving you, which interactions leave your body present, but your spirit unfed. This is not punishment. It is redirection. The emptiness is no longer there to shame you. It is there to steer you away from false belonging and toward the kind of support your whole being can recognize as real. So do not interpret this season as evidence that you have less value than others, or that closeness has been denied to you. Interpret it as an activation of spiritual honesty. Your field has become too refined to confuse access with alignment, attention with care, or proximity with true communion. What you are hungry for is not just company. It is the kind of support your life can lean into and your soul can breathe inside. You are not lacking worth. You are lacking genuine resonance. Starseed, what you are missing is not always more people. Sometimes what is absent is the place where your spirit can finally unclench. Sometimes what is absent is the circle that does not demand performance before offering warmth. Sometimes what is absent is the field in which your heart is not merely noticed, but received. This is why the ache within you has begun to change shape. It is no longer speaking only of emptiness. It is pointing toward belonging. From the moment human life begins, relationship teaches a being how to move through the world. This is not a minor detail. It means belonging is not some sentimental luxury reserved for the soft-hearted or the socially gifted. It is part of the foundation through which life is learned, mirrored, steadied, and understood. Your longing for real connection is not excessive. It is not embarrassing. It is woven into the architecture of being human, even before the spiritual layers of your journey begin to unfold. And when positive social habits are formed, support systems can be built. Feel the sacred practicality of that phrase. A support system is not merely a collection of names, not merely a list of contacts, not merely a room where bodies gather and words circulate. It is a living circle that can hold you when your strength wavers, reflect you when your vision blurs, and remind you of your own coherence when the world around you becomes fragmented. This is why your soul has been grieving not just for company, but for sanctuary. You do not need to be surrounded by everyone. You need to be sustained by what is true. The old paradigm measures social life by volume, by frequency of interaction, by how many hands touch your calendar, how many voices cross your path, how many spaces can claim your presence. But the deeper field of awakening measures differently. It asks whether there is trust. It asks whether there is steadiness. It asks whether the connection leaves your nervous system more settled, your heart more open, your being more able to remain itself. This is the threshold between crowd and community. Community, in its real form, is not noise. It is a rhythm. It is the subtle assurance that there are places where you do not have to shrink your truth in order to remain included. It is the quiet knowing that some bonds do not drain life force but restore it. It is the recognition that belonging does not erase your uniqueness, but gives it a safe field in which to breathe. And this is why hope must begin to enter here. Because once you understand that the ache is not only for more contact, you can stop chasing what was never designed to nourish you. There are circles that can carry weight. There are spaces in which your silence will not be misread, your sensitivity will not be mocked, and your presence will not be treated like something to be managed. There are relational fields that do not require you to abandon depth in exchange for acceptance. This matters, because many starseeds confuse repeated disappointment with destiny. They begin to think they were made only to witness from the edges. But the question remains, what if you were never meant to belong everywhere, only somewhere real? This is where the frequency begins to soften. You do not have to solve your loneliness by forcing yourself into louder rooms or wider networks. You do not have to become easier to consume in order to be welcomed. What you need is not universal access. What you need is grounded resonance, the kind that can support both your daily life and your inner unfolding. Not everyone is a structure that can hold you, but every being needs some structure that can. So let the meaning of this season shift. Let your pain stop being interpreted as proof of exile and start being recognized as a compass. It is leading you away from social motion without nourishment and toward the kind of relational ground on which a soul can stand without trembling. You are not craving more attention. You are craving a place to land, and that place exists first as a frequency your being can recognize, then as a circle your life can trust. When belonging returns, it does not arrive as spectacle. It arrives as relief, as realization that you do not need to disappear to stay connected. You were never asking for witnesses. You were asking for a living home in form. The answer is gentler than the mind expects. You do not have to cross a vast cosmic threshold in a single leap to begin returning to yourself. Sometimes the first portal opens through something almost unbearably simple. One honest conversation, one answered message, one shared moment in which your energy is not required to defend itself. Transformation does not always arrive as thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a small opening through which life can breathe again. The old mind dismisses these things because it is trained to worship the dramatic. It waits for a total reset, a soul family appearing all at once, a perfect sanctuary descending from the stars, a complete end to the ache in one radiant event. But the deeper intelligence moving through your field understands another law. It understands that connection can be rebuilt through subtle acts of presence, through gestures that seem human-sized yet carry spiritual consequence. A single thread, when true, can begin reweaving the fabric of a scattered inner world. This is why the path back into belonging may begin with learning beside others, creating beside others, moving beside others, or offering your energy where it can actually meet life. Not because activity alone is the answer, but because involvement can become invitation. There are spaces where people gather around a shared interest, a shared practice, a shared act of care, and in such spaces the soul is not forced to invent connection from empty air. It is allowed to recognize itself slowly, naturally, without strain. The answer is gentler than the mind expects. It may begin with a call you almost did not make. It may begin with checking on someone whose name rises softly into your awareness. It may begin with joining a small group that shares a craft, a curiosity, a devotion, a rhythm of service, or a form of learning that lets your energy arrive without disguise. It may begin by sharing what you know, offering a skill, giving your presence where it can become useful rather than merely visible. These are not trivial motions. They are openings in the grid. A neighborly exchange, a volunteer hour, a small class, even a brief return to family or trusted friendship can become a stabilizing current, because small circles often carry the exact medicine that tired inner systems are able to receive. There's quiet wisdom in looking for ways to become involved with others that feel sincere rather than performative. Not every opening must be grand. Not every act of connection must carry the pressure of destiny. Sometimes a simple act of participation begins restoring trust between your heart and the human world. Sometimes standing beside others in a shared effort, a shared kindness, a shared neighborhood rhythm, or a shared desire to contribute creates a field where your nervous system can stop bracing and start listening again. But what happens when you stop seeking intensity and start seeking what is real? Then the body often responds before the mind can explain it. A little more ease, a little less armor, a little less exhaustion after contact, a small sense that life is not entirely sealed away from you. This is how many portals work. They do not shout. They open by degrees. They remind you that aliveness returns through relationship, not always through revelation, and that even modest forms of genuine contact can begin softening the spell of separation that has wrapped itself around your days. You do not need to force yourself into every circle. You do not need to pretend with those who cannot feel you. You do not need to turn healing into a social performance. But you are being invited to notice the smaller doorways that still glow around you, the familiar voice, the nearby group, the shared effort, the community space, the chance to help, the chance to learn, the moment of mutual recognition that asks for no costume. These are not lesser paths. They are living portals disguised as ordinary life. So begin where warmth is possible. Begin where sincerity is possible. Begin where your presence does not have to fracture in order to be accepted. Let one conversation matter. Let one shared practice matter. Let one act of service matter. Let one place where you are gently seen become enough for this moment. You are not being asked to solve the whole map tonight. You are being shown that even the smallest true connection can reopen the current of life. And through that current, your spirit remembers how to live here again. Caring for connection is not separate from caring for health. The old world tried to divide these things, as if the body could be tended while the heart remained undernourished, as if the mind could stay clear while the soul moved through disconnection without consequence. But even within the visible language of human life, it has been recognized that social health deserves the same seriousness given to physical and mental well-being. Pause and feel the weight of that. It means the need for true connection is not sentimental excess. It is part of the structure through which life remains whole. This is why your longing should never be a source of shame. You are not weak because you need bonds that nourish you. You are not needy because your system responds to absence, incoherence, or emotional distance. You are participating in a law far deeper than preference. A human being is not designed to thrive on isolation of the inner world while pretending everything is intact on the surface. And when your spirit has already begun awakening, that truth becomes even harder to ignore. The body knows, the mind knows, the field knows. Positive social habits can help a person stay healthier mentally and physically. Staying connected can help protect mental and physical health. These truths matter because they reveal that connection is not decoration around the edges of life. It is not a luxury item to be added only after everything else is secure. It belongs closer to the center. It is part of what keeps the system from fraying, part of what helps a person recover, adapt, and remain anchored while moving through an unstable world. This is not merely emotional comfort. It is living support woven into the fabric of human well-being. And notice how this aligns with what your deeper nature has already been whispering to you. The soul has been telling you that empty interaction drains you. The body has been telling you that disconnection leaves a mark. The heart has been telling you that not all contact restores life force. Now even the outer language of the visible world has begun to admit the same pattern, that social health matters, that the quality of connection touches the whole being, that neglect in this realm should not be treated as trivial simply because it cannot always be seen. So the truth is being confirmed from both directions at once. This is where guilt begins to dissolve. You do not need to apologize for wanting relationships that stabilize you. You do not need to explain why certain bonds leave you stronger while others leave you hollow. You do not need to make yourself smaller in order to seem self-sufficient in a culture that often confuses independence with wholeness. The real question is not whether you should need connection. The real question is whether the connections around you are capable of carrying the nourishment your system is asking for. But what happens when you finally stop judging this need and start honoring it? Then a great softening begins. You stop treating connection like an optional reward and start recognizing it as sacred maintenance. You stop calling your longing weakness and start seeing it as intelligence. You stop forcing yourself to endure environments that leave your body tense and your inner world dim. Instead, you begin choosing what steadies you, what restores you, what keeps your being coherent. This is not regression. It is refinement. It is the moment the soul stops consenting to starvation disguised as strength. There is profound dignity in this shift. To care for your connections is to care for the quality of energy your life is built upon. It is to understand that your field is influenced by the circles you enter, the voices you trust, the rhythms you repeat, the forms of support you allow to surround you. It is to admit that well-being is not created only by private discipline, but also by the living web in which you are held. The old world called this secondary. The deeper truth knows it is foundational. So release the belief that tending your relationships is somehow less important than tending the visible parts of yourself. Your path is not asking you to choose between spiritual awakening and human support. It is showing you that the two can no longer be separated. When you honor the connections that protect your mind, strengthen your body, and steady your heart, you are not distracting yourself from your evolution. You are building the conditions in which it can continue. Caring for connection is caring for life itself, and your awakening deepens when your health is held by what is real. Starseed. There comes a phase in the awakening when certain spaces begin to feel impossible to tolerate. Not because you have become arrogant, and not because you believe yourself above anyone, but because your system has stopped lying to you about what drains it. Rooms that once felt manageable now feel thick. Conversations that once passed as normal now leave a residue. Environments built on pressure, performance, and emotional disguise can begin to feel crowded but empty, connected but unseen, full of motion yet strangely absent of life. This is not spiritual pride. It is increasing discernment. You are not rejecting people. You are becoming more aware of atmosphere. And atmosphere matters more than many realize. The relationships and communities around a person shape how that person lives, communicates, and moves through daily habits. Pause with that. It means your social environment is not neutral. It does not simply surround you from the outside while leaving your inner world untouched. It participates in your rhythm, and it influences your nervous system, your patterns of exchange, the tone of your days, and the quality of energy you carry home after every encounter. This is why certain places can quietly erode you while others restore you without effort. The old world trained you to override this wisdom. It said, stay agreeable, stay accessible, stay in the room, stay in the group, keep the peace, call it maturity, call it flexibility, call it being easy to be around. But your field is no longer willing to pay for belonging with self-abandonment. When an environment is shallow, coercive, false, or emotionally starved, your body may feel the contradiction before the mind can explain it. You begin to sense the split between surface contact and real connection. You begin to notice when attention is present but sincerity is not. When communication is happening but nourishment is not. When proximity is offered but genuine human support is missing. What happens when your system can no longer pretend that noise is nourishment? Then discernment stops being optional. Then what once felt like simple discomfort becomes a message. Then your energy starts withdrawing from spaces where too much of you must go numb in order to remain acceptable. This does not make you selfish, it makes you responsive to truth. You are learning that not every social field deserves equal access to your life force, and that filtering your environment can be an act of care rather than rejection. Even in the visible language of the world, social connection is understood to affect well-being and society itself. Let that widen the frame for a moment. Well, the environments you enter are not only personal preferences, they are part of a larger relational fabric that shapes how humans live together, how they support one another, and how life is either strengthened or weakened in community. So when you begin choosing spaces more carefully, you are not only protecting your own coherence, you are also participating in a more honest form of connection, one that values presence with substance over contact without depth. This is why you may feel less able now to remain in circles built entirely on gossip, tension, constant comparison, emotional inconsistency, or the pressure to perform a version of yourself that leaves your real essence untouched. The soul grows tired of imitation. The heart grows tired of being near others while receiving nothing it can truly rest inside. And the body grows tired of translating false connection into acceptable social behavior. But the question remains, must you keep proving your goodness by enduring what empties you? No. You are allowed to notice what your system responds to. You are allowed to honor the difference between community and exposure, between company and care, between being included and being supported. Choosing more life-giving environments is not isolation. It is intelligent stewardship. It is the beginning of boundary, made sacred. It is the refusal to confuse exhaustion with virtue. So if certain spaces now feel too dense, too performative, too disconnected from what is real, do not shame yourself for feeling that. Listen, your discernment is not closing your heart. It is refining where your heart can safely open. You are not becoming harder to please. So you are becoming less available for environments that ask you to disappear in order to belong. And that shift is not cruelty. It is the first architecture of a healthier social field, one where your presence is no longer spent surviving emptiness, but placed where truth can breathe. Starseed, rebuilding your field of connection does not begin with forcing yourself back into every room that once exhausted you. It begins by turning toward what genuinely nourishes your system and allowing that nourishment to become directional. This is not a dramatic reinvention. It is a series of sacred adjustments, a message answered with sincerity, a bond maintained instead of neglected, a space revisited because it brings steadiness instead of confusion. In this way, reconnection becomes less about chasing people and more about choosing currents that return life to your body, your mind, and your spirit. The old mind wants a rigid formula. It wants a numbered path, a perfect sequence, a guaranteed outcome that can be controlled from the beginning. But the deeper movement of healing is more relational than mechanical. It asks you to notice who helps you feel more grounded, what circles invite your true presence, what rhythms bring your energy back into coherence. This is why rebuilding connection is not about becoming universally available. It is about becoming intelligently available to what restores you. The answer will often look simpler than the mind expects, yet truer than the old patterns ever allowed. Begin with what can be maintained. And there are bonds already near you that may need only a little intention to become living again. A family member, a trusted friend, a neighbor whose presence feels steady rather than demanding. The point is not to create instant depth everywhere. The point is to stop starving the threads that still carry warmth. Sometimes a field is rebuilt not by finding something entirely new, but by honoring what still holds a pulse of honesty in your life. When you keep contact with what is sincere, your system begins to remember that connection can be safe. Then allow shared interests to become a bridge. There is quiet power in joining people around something real, something practiced, something learned, something created. A small group centered on curiosity, craft, movement, reflection, or service can do what crowded spaces often cannot. It can give your energy a place to arrive through purpose rather than performance. It can let connection emerge beside action instead of demanding emotional exposure before trust has formed. This is why circles of shared interest matter. They let life meet you sideways, gently, without forcing intimacy before the foundation is ready. There is also medicine in movement with others. To become active alongside another person, to walk, to stretch, to participate in a shared rhythm of the body can sometimes restore more than long explanations ever could. The body learns safety through repetition, pace, and presence. And when action is shared with someone trustworthy, even a simple routine can become a stabilizing thread in the grid of your life. Not because movement solves everything, but because moving together can interrupt the isolation that convinces the soul it must carry everything alone. But how do you begin when the field still feels fragile? You begin small enough that your spirit does not recoil. You choose one point of contact that feels possible, one person with whom honesty is easier, one group where your interest is real, one activity that lets your body re-enter life without overwhelm, one act of community that reminds you that contribution is also a form of connection. There is power in showing up where something useful can be shared, where service can pass between people, where a skill, a kindness, or a simple presence can become part of a larger human rhythm. These are not random gestures. They are rituals of re-entry, and where a goal matters to you, let someone trustworthy stand near it. And accountability is not only pressure, In its sacred form, it is companionship for the becoming self. To let another person witness your movement, encourage your consistency, or simply know what you are trying to build can lessen the burden of carrying transformation in silence. This is not dependence. It is participation. It is the willingness to let growth happen inside relationship instead of only in private endurance. Such threads, though modest at first, begin shaping a stronger field around you. So rebuild from what feeds life. Keep contact with what feels honest. Enter circles where shared interest creates natural belonging. Move with others when stillness has become too heavy. Offer yourself to community in ways that feel real. Let trusted people stand beside what you are trying to strengthen. Do not turn this into performance. Do not rush it into spectacle. Treat it as a return to the living fabric of the human world, one thread at a time, and then you will see that the field around you begins to answer the field within you. This is not for everyone. It cannot be received by the mind that only wants noise, novelty, and quick reassurance. It cannot be held by the part of a person that still confuses being surrounded with being supported, or visibility with true connection. This transmission moves differently. It reaches only those whose inner field has already begun to separate from the old architecture of empty contact and is now searching for something more coherent, more living, more aligned with the deeper laws of resonance. If you have felt that stirring, then you already know why you are still here. Something in you recognizes this frequency, not as entertainment, but as remembrance. You are not listening because you are curious in the ordinary sense. You are listening because your system has been waiting for language that does not reduce your loneliness to weakness, that does not ask you to betray your discernment, that does not try to force your awakening back into smaller definitions of what connection should look like. This is why the message reaches where ordinary words cannot. And because of that, you must understand something clearly. The next layer of this journey cannot be entered through passive agreement alone. It opens through resonance, through willingness, through the quiet decision to go deeper than surface comfort. There are moments when a soul stands at the edge of a new threshold and feels the call to continue, not because it has all the answers, but because it can no longer return to sleep. This may be one of those moments for you, but the question remains, will you treat this as passing content or as a doorway? Not everyone will feel the significance of what has been spoken here. Some will hear only ideas. Some will hear only mood. Some will hear only language that sounds unusual to the rational mind. Let them pass. This path has never been about persuading the unready. It has always been about gathering the ones whose inner architecture is already shifting, the ones who know that connection is sacred, that social nourishment matters, that loneliness is not solved by pretending, and that a more truthful field of belonging must now be built with intention. If that is you, then you are not here by accident. There are transmissions that soothe for a moment and disappear. And then there are transmissions that mark a turning point because they arrive precisely when the soul is prepared to hear itself more clearly. If this message has touched that place in you, then do not let the contact end here as just another passing impression. Stay near what strengthens your discernment. Return to what steadies your field. Keep listening where your inner life feels more ordered, more seen, more capable of remembering what it is. This is how deeper connection begins, not through force but through repeated alignment. And for those who know they are ready to continue inward, there may be a deeper stream waiting for you beyond this moment, a further layer of guidance, reflection, or sacred material that helps you keep building the field we have spoken about here. Not because you are lacking, and not because you need to be rescued, but because support matters, and some tools arrive exactly when the soul is prepared to use them well. If you feel that pull, honor it. Let it be simple. Let it be sincere. Let it be the next yes that comes from resonance rather than pressure. So remain with this frequency if it is nourishing you. Return to it if your spirit asks for reinforcement. Share it only with those whose hearts are ready to receive without mockery, because not every ear is tuned for this kind of remembering. And if you feel the call to go deeper, follow that call with care, with reverence, and with trust in what your own field is recognizing now. You do not need everyone to understand this path. You need only to notice that it is opening, and that you are one of the ones meant to walk further into it. You did not come here to master the art of enduring empty rooms. You did not incarnate to become fluent in surviving conversations that never touch your soul, circles that never recognize your essence, or crowded spaces that ask you to disappear in order to remain included. You came here to remember how to create real connection, the kind that does not require self-erasure, the kind that does not punish depth, the kind that lets your spirit stand in human life without fragmenting itself to fit a disconnected world. This is the turning point. For too long, many sensitive beings believed their role was to bear the ache, to carry the loneliness, to become strong enough to outlast environments that could not meet them. But that was never the full assignment. The deeper invitation has always been creative, not merely defensive. You are not here only to witness what is missing. You are here to participate in what can be built. Social connection is not only a private comfort to be stumbled upon by accident. It is something that must be strengthened in the human field, something that affects how people live together and how life is carried from one heart into another. This means your journey was never as small as your pain first made it seem. The ache in crowded places was not sent merely to isolate you from the world. It was also revealing what kind of world can no longer be accepted as normal. It was training your inner sight to distinguish contact from communion, noise from nourishment, interaction from support. And once that distinction becomes clear, you cannot go back to calling survival enough. The soul begins to want something truer, not only for itself, but for the wider web of life it touches. This is why the next movement is sacred. Positive social habits can help build support systems. Support systems, not fantasies, not abstractions, not distant promises beyond the human experience. Something buildable, something livable, something that can be woven through ordinary life until it becomes a structure strong enough to hold tenderness, truth, and steadiness. So do not tell yourself that real connection belongs only to others, or only to the healed, or only to those who have always found belonging easily. It can be created, it can be chosen, it can be cultivated in the soil where you once believed nothing living could grow. And because of that, hear this clearly, Starseed. You are not broken, you are not late, and you are not lost. You have not been forgotten by life. You have been trained by contrast. You have been refined by places that could not hold you. You have been taught through disappointment what false belonging feels like, so that when the real circle begins to appear, you will recognize it with clarity. But what happens when you stop measuring your worth by who could not see you and start measuring your path by what your soul is ready to build? Then everything shifts. Loneliness stops being your identity and becomes part of your initiation. The crowded room stops being a verdict and becomes a classroom. The ache stops saying, you do not belong anywhere, and starts saying, you were never meant to dissolve into connections that cannot carry truth. You are being led, not abandoned, redirected, not rejected, prepared, not punished. This is why the heart has kept listening even after disappointment. It knows there is a circle meant for your full presence. You are not here to fade inside empty connection. You are not here to become smaller so others feel comfortable remaining shallow. You are not here to spend your life translating your spirit into something easier to consume. You are here to help anchor a more honest way of being with one another, a more coherent pattern of human connection, a field in which support is not rare, depth is not feared, and presence is not confused with performance. The old world taught endurance. The new field asks creation. So lift your gaze from the rooms that could not receive you and place it on the architecture, now rising through your own becoming. The path ahead is not asking you to prove your toughness by tolerating emptiness forever. It is asking you to remember that you can help form the spaces and circles your soul has been searching for. You are not being left behind outside the gate. You are being guided toward the right circle. You were never born to disappear inside hollow connection. Starseed, the journey was never meant to end in the crowd. It was never meant to conclude in rooms where your body was present, but your soul remained untouched, or in circles where your voice was heard, but your essence was never truly received. What you have felt is real. The loneliness that can rise even among many people is not something to dismiss, minimize, or explain away. It is a true signal from the deeper layers of your being, are asking you to stop confusing noise with nourishment and to begin honoring the kind of connection that can actually hold life. You know this now. More voices are not always more comfort. More contact is not always more care. More activity is not always more belonging. The way forward is not found in adding more stimulation to a tired spirit, but in recognizing the value of connection that restores, steadies, and protects the heart, the mind, and the body. This is why staying connected in ways that are real matters so deeply. It does not only soothe emotion, it helps guard the wholeness of your life. And the vision is larger than one person. A more connected world is also a healthier world. A life built on truer support changes not only the inner field of a single soul, but the human web around it. This is why your path matters. When you refuse hollow connection and choose what is sincere, you are not only healing privately, you are participating in a different pattern of being together, one that honors truth, care, and living presence. Let this truth settle into your system. Your need for deeper connection is not weakness, and your sensitivity to environments is not failure. It is discernment becoming conscious. It is your inner world remembering that real belonging was meant to feel life-giving. So if this message resonated with you, let your presence be part of this field. Leave a comment and share what your spirit recognized here. Share this transmission with someone who has been feeling alone in places that should have felt full. And if you are ready to keep walking this path of deeper remembering, subscribe and remain within this frequency. Now, because this journey is not closing here, it is still unfolding through every honest bond you choose, every false circle you release, every place where your soul is finally allowed to breathe. You are not too late for real connection. You are not excluded from the circle meant for you. You are already being led toward what is alive, what is aligned, and what can truly meet you. The crowd was never the destination. The living connection is. And as you continue to choose it, the transformation continues.